All right, guys, we have two more bits of things to talk about. That is, and our next one is this. Seth Rogen recently did an interview, and he was asked very plain and bluntly about cancel culture. And Seth Rogen had some really interesting things to say. There's kind of a lot to break down. Now, this particular article is on Joe Blow. I'm not going to read the entire article. It's quite long. But Seth Rogen was being interviewed on Good Morning Britain, and they were asking him about the things that he's done in the past, and he just kind of went off from there. Seth Rogen says, "I think there are certain jokes that for sure have not aged well, but I think that's the nature of comedy. I think conceptually those movies are sound, and I think that there's a reason that they've lasted. Jokes, however, are not things that are necessarily built to last." Seth Rogen goes on a little bit more. He says, "To me, when I see comedians complaining about this kind of thing," referring to cancel culture, he says, "I don't understand what they're complaining about. If you've made a joke that's aged terribly, accept it. And if you don't think it's aged terribly, then say that. If you don't like that, then don't be a comedian anymore." I think this part, if you don't like it, then don't be a comedian. I think that's a bit of an overstatement, but okay, whatever. He says, "To me, it's not worth complaining about to the degree I see comedians complaining about. I was never a comedian that made..." Sorry, guys. This is going to take a minute to get through and read. So again, just bear with me here. All right. Apologies. "I was never a comedian that made jokes that were truly designed to target groups that were subjugated in some way. Have we done that without realizing it? Definitely. And those are things in our movies, and they're out there. And they're things that I am more than happy to say that have not aged well. But on my Twitter, I've never made a joke that's outwardly horrific in some way. And if you have, I would question, why did you do that?" Again, I take a small issue with what he's saying here, but okay, let's take it for what it is. Saying terrible things is bad. So if you've said something terrible, then it's something you should confront in some way, shape, or form. I don't think that's I don't think that is cancel culture. That's you saying something terrible if that's what you've done. All right. So there's a lot to kind of talk and break down here. But on the whole, I agree with Seth Rogen. I'm not. This video is not about cancel culture, and this video is not about confronting cancel culture. The whole purpose of the segment of this video is owning your mistakes. There's an interesting thing about cancel culture in that if you've made a mistake, that's strike one and you're out. You're done. One and done, right? And I'm not a huge fan of that ideology. Do we all make mistakes? Yes. Do some people make bigger mistakes than others? Undoubtedly. But we're not, we're literally just talking about Ted Lasso and how great it is to see flawed characters. We are flawed human beings. We all make extremely bad judgment calls sometimes. I myself have said some really egregious, terrible things on stage in front of a live audience, thinking, oh man, this is going to be hilarious. Guess what? It wasn't. I've owned up to that. And even more than owning up to it, I have learned from saying those awful things on stage, thinking either A, oh, this is going to be edgy. I'm like one of those, like, I'm an edgy comedian. But then I've also learned that or rather, let me go back. The other reason for saying it is like, oh, I'm going to push the boundaries, or, oh, I'm totally going to get away. Oh, this is going to be made. Oh, it's the context. Oh, I've created. No. Some things don't work. Some things just should not be said. Sometimes we need to test the boundary because comedy is about pushing boundaries. Comedy, not always, but oftentimes is about making people feel uncomfortable. And when you make people feel uncomfortable, you challenge what they know. You challenge what they believe in. And two things are going to happen. I've said this for a long time, not on this show, but in like my classes that I teach. You're going to do two things. One, you're going to get people to reevaluate what they know and believe to be true. Or two, you're going to help them solidify what they already believe, right? And that's just depending on how, based on their own personal experience and how they receive the joke or message or whatever, that's how they're going to respond, right? So going back to Seth Rogen, there are a couple of things in this article that he points out. In this top paragraph, he says, I don't understand what they're complaining about. If you've made an let's see, if they've aged terribly, and if you don't like it, don't be a comedian anymore. That's, I don't know. I feel like that's a bit of a reach. I feel like if you don't like it, then just leave. I don't know if that's an answer. That seems like a very generalistic answer. Well, if you don't like it, if you can't take the heat, just leave the kitchen, kind of thing. Well, no, I mean, like, we need to learn from our mistakes, right? We need to understand that we did something wrong, and then progress on there. And like, I don't know. I think that's a bit unfair to say. The other thing is that he says in this article. It's in the second paragraph. On my Twitter, I've never made a joke that's horrific. And if you have, I would question, why did you do that? Okay. Let's talk about the James Gunn for a second. Because James Gunn was one of those filmmakers and storytellers and comedians that tried to use his edgy nature of like, oh, this is who I'm going to be. And, oh, I'm going to say like these really radical things and get away with it because that's the image that I'm trying to put. That's why people say that kind of stuff. And guess what? In James Gunn's case, he needed to go through the refiner's fire and realize maybe this isn't okay to say. And he's since apologized for the things that he's put out on Twitter, thinking he's trying to be edgy and new age and whatever. But I think at the end of the day, the job of a storyteller, the job of a comedian specifically, is to make people feel happy, make people laugh, right? Anyway, those are just my thoughts. And those are Seth Rogen's comments about cancel culture. When asked about cancel culture, that's what Seth Rogen had to say. I'm sure this discussion is bigger than any one of us. There's so many thoughts and so many opinions to be had about cancel culture and specifically about Seth Rogen's comments. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about what Seth Rogen had to say about cancel culture, about owning your mistakes? And I even take that to the next level and say, learn from your mistakes, grow, because we're all going to make them. We are all going to offend people. It's just going to, that's human nature. We are going to offend each other. But I think the trick is offending each other, recognizing that we offended someone, and hopefully making the steps necessary to overcome that or to correct it or to make amends in that thing. And then just never do it again. Learn from the mistake and then move on, right? And in that way, cancel culture won't dictate who we're going to be or where we're going to be, right? It's all about forgiveness within ourselves, going outward. Anyway, those are just my thoughts, but I'm going to hear what your thoughts are. Maybe you guys have more opinions on the matter. Maybe there's so much more that I'm not talking about in this particular topic. Let me know down in the comment section below. All right, hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what the golden idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark would want you to do. Whoosh, whoosh.